My name is John Keegan and I'm an alcoholic. And this is another in the series of DVDs that I hope will help somebody along the way. In the early days of recovery in prison, detox, rehab, wherever, in your own home, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, the message will be loud and clear. I've been getting some very, very good feedback from a couple of people disabled. They're finding them invaluable. People can't get to meetings, they watch a different one each night. And it boosts up their strength and hope, and it's helping to keep them sober, and that can't be bad. That alone can't be bad. But they're also helping people in Ireland, and hopefully in some of the prisons. And now as far afield as Guernsey, where apparently they've got a very small circuit there, and new blood is always welcome. And these DVDs are there now, and they're going to be helping people. And there's a few people out there apparently who can't get to meetings. So I'm so grateful these people have come forward and are helping to change people's lives. And the one that follows me is a good pal of mine, John. I've watched him over the years. He's the proper job. He's been there. He's suffered. There's no question about it. He's been dry and sober a good while now and clean. And I've watched him grow, particularly probably in the last 12, 14 months. So it don't matter how long you're off, you can still get better. And mentally, physically, he's smarter. He's come on in every sense of the word. And it's lovely to see people grow. It gives me great, great pleasure to see people come here every week at different stages of recovery. I'm watching them all grow. I can't explain the feeling. It's like we've claimed one back from the booze or the drugs. And it's not a game, it's too serious to be a game. It's too dangerous and serious a game. John puts a lot of service in. He'll go to any lengths to help people. The reason he does that, the reason we all do it, is because he's been there. He knows how bad it is. And now he knows how good it can be. And he wants you to have some of that. And this is your opportunity to have a good feed of that. Take big dollops of it because it's real good stuff. And he's a real gentleman, and I've got no doubt whatsoever if you watch this and you're interested, you'll get something from it. If you're not, maybe in the future. But if you're interested in the moment and you watch this and you get something from it, watch it over and over. Pick up some tricks of the trade and maybe some shortcuts. And now I'll hand you over to the star of the show, my friend John. Thank you very much.
My name's John and I'm an alcoholic, and it's good to be able to do this. It's good for me to be able to do it, and I hope even if it helps just one person, it's worth it. But primarily I'm doing it for myself, because this type of thing keeps me sober, and I was told you've got to give it away to keep it. And what I'm going to try and give away this afternoon is my experience, strength and hope. Basically that just means I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. The effects of alcohol that I still have to live with, and the effects of what it did to me I still have to live with to this day. For a long time didn't know anything about alcoholism. I didn't know what an alcoholic was. I suppose if you'd have pushed me, I'd have said it would have been a rough sleeper or a tramp with an old Mac on and a piece of string around his waist, with a brown paper bag with a bottle in it, and it wasn't as bad as that. So I could possibly be an alcoholic. A lot of what I'm going to say today is in hindsight, because for a lot of years I was just, I suppose, ignorant. I was ignorant and I didn't know any better, and when you know better you've got to do better, and I never understood anything about alcoholism. I didn't know there was help for anybody that had a problem with alcohol. It was never questioned for many, many years. I don't know whether I was born alcoholic or whether whether it's genetical or whether I crossed the line. I don't really know, but I know that my earliest childhood memories were nightmares, and I've since learned that the problem of the alcoholic centres in the mind, and I used to get tormented at an early age in the night with dreams and nightmares, and I was born in Bristol, and my father's English and my mother's English, and my mother was a nurse and my father was a minister of religion. They did their best for me, but I was a very rebellious lad, and incredibly self-willed. Didn't like being told what to do. I suppose there must have been good times, but I can't remember many good times. I don't know why. Somebody diagnosed me once with false memory syndrome, and a lot of my memory is shot to pieces, to be honest with you, through the effects of what I've done to myself during my life. But I believe that can repair itself, so there's still hope for me there. I was forced to go to church and to go to Sunday school, so I had a lot of religion from a very early age, and the main emotion I suppose I felt looking back without even knowing it was fear. I can see it today, but I couldn't see it at the time. And fear was something that ruled my life. I didn't like school, I didn't get on with teachers. I was bullied quite a lot. I used to think it was because of my dad's job, that I was supposed to be squeaky clean, so I ended up being a bit of a rebel, and I had to do everything over the top to prove myself to be a man, because I didn't really have any kind of identity. I couldn't seem to fit in with anybody in particular, and I sort of just bundled through life doing what I saw, what I perceived. And I was that confused that I didn't know whether I was a Hell's Angel, a punk rocker, a born again Christian, or what I was really. I was just very, very confused and very fearful. I remember I used to walk down the road and dodge the cracks in the pavement, and if I stood on a crack in the pavement, I was going to go to hell. I had an awful fear of hell and an awful fear of God. That's not to say that there isn't some kind of loving God. There probably is, but because of the fear inside of me, that is what I felt, fear. And the fear came out in a number of ways. I believe it's the core root of my illness today is fear. The root cause of my illness is fear. It's fear-based illness. And I'm taught to face everything and recover, or fuck everything and run. FEAR stands for false evidence appearing real. So a lot of it was nonsense, but it was very real to me at the time. I was scared of kids at school. I used to sit in the classroom and look out of the window. I didn't want to be there, but I did love nature. I loved to go fishing. At an early age I did paper rounds so I could earn a few quid. Initially it was to buy sweets, to take to school, to make friends, because I was sort of people pleasing and I was trying to make friends because I wanted to be liked and I just wanted to fit in with everybody else. But I discovered alcohol after being sexually abused at the age of 12. And I broke into a cricket club and stole some Guinness and drank some Guinness. And when I got home, the room spun round and I was ill. But it didn't deter me. Anybody else would have probably said, I'm never going to do that again. And probably wouldn't have done it again. But I went back for more, and I experimented through my childhood years with alcohol. And another occasion was the Jubilee year. I think if I remember rightly, some Jubilee stout was brought out, and I went with my friend to a social club with his dad and drank a load of this Jubilee stout. I was around the age of 13 or 14, and I remember getting out the car and going to the front door, and my dad opened the door and I ran up the stairs and I was throwing up all the way up the stairs, and I lay on the bed and the room spun round and I felt really, really rough, and my dad was hanging over me and I was saying, I'm never going to do this again, I'm never going to do this again. And I promised faithfully that I'd never do it again. The problem was, that I didn't know what I suffered from, and of course, pain has no memory, and shortly after that I was at it again, and I used to go to football matches. That was a sort of, I used to steal things, I used to tell lies, but I always had this conscience because of the morals and the principles I was given as a child, which my parents did instill into me, I believe. I believe everybody's got a conscience, but I would suffer enormous guilt and shame and remorse the following morning if I'd done something wrong the night before. And it used to really, really hurt me, and I used to feel an awful lot of guilt about it, and I didn't know how to get rid of the guilt. And because I couldn't communicate with anybody, I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. I started getting involved with people that were going to football matches, and we'd drink whiskey on the way to the football match, and basically just get into trouble and just run riot. And I felt an identity with being able to do that. I had an idea that at some stage I was going to end up in prison, and the thought of prison horrified me because I did value my freedom. And so I stopped drinking for a while using organised religion, and I got into the martial arts for a few years and got fit, and then did a geographical and moved to the Channel Islands with my parents shortly after I left school. And when I went over there, I thought, I'm going to turn over a new leaf, nobody knows me. I'm going to turn over a new leaf, and I worked on farms. and I wasn't drinking, and I met a girl, and we used to watch The Little House on the Prairie in the Waltons, and this girl was later to be my wife, and we had some great plans about how we were going to live our life, and really it was an ideal situation. Her father, or my ex-father-in-law, was a builder, and I went into the building trade, and he helped me build a house. I think it was around the age of 21 I built my own house. I then got my own business building houses, but then the drinking started, and probably for 10 years, I had alcohol in my bloodstream every day for 10 years. And alcoholism is a progressive illness. It gets worse, it never gets better. And it destroyed me and the people that love me the most. And I still live with regrets, and I still live with some of the shame of the things that I did when I was drinking. But I have to realise that that I was a sick person that suffered from an illness, and I still do suffer from an illness called alcoholism. In America it's classified as a mental illness, but I don't believe it is in this country. But I believe that I had grave emotional and mental disorders before I drank. It's probably one of the reasons I did drink. And alcoholism is mental, physical and spiritual, and I also believe it to be an emotional illness. And when I was married, I had no idea about emotions. I had no idea about how to communicate with another human being on any sort of level, really. I could never sit down and discuss matters. It was a give and take thing. It was a swap sort of scenario. You do something for me and I'll do something for you. And the drinking on the building sites, that really the sort of the way it was work hard and play hard, and play hard meant drinking and gambling, and I did things that I'm not proud of, and the destruction of taking that first drink, in my mind, is absolutely horrendous. Because I would often say to my wife, I'm just going out for a couple of beers, and I could end up coming back a day or 2 days or even 3 days later, and quite often not knowing what I'd done or where I'd been or who I'd been with. And some days in the mornings I used to get recall throughout the day, or people would say, do you remember doing this, John? And I'd piece it all back together again. And I could be the nicest bloke. I was mainly the pub and club drinker, but I could be the nicest bloke in the pub one minute, and the next minute I could be dangerously antisocial. And the hangovers used to be horrendous, because I'd often stay in after hours in the pubs and get home at the early hours of the morning and get to work and start the mixer up. And I was a block layer by trade, and it was heavy work, and I thought, well, that period of my drinking was like a period of reward drinking. I believed that I deserved a good drink because of the work I was doing, and I had no real thought of my wife at home. And at this stage, my wife gave me 2 beautiful children who I love very much, but if I was in the park with them, my head was in the pub. I always wanted to be where the action was. So today I see that I was a failure as a father, I was a failure as a husband, I was a failure as a businessman, I was a failure as a son, I was a failure as a brother, I was a failure as a son-in-law, I was a failure in all areas of my life completely. Because in my own mind, you see, my ego was telling me that I was successful. But I wasn't successful. I had the cart before the horse. And alcohol had me in its grip. And any money I had, I would spend on alcohol or alcohol-related things. And, I was having to remortgage the house. I was having to go and see bank managers and get money that way and tell them I was doing home improvements, and I'd end up spending the money on alcohol. And I was drinking with heavy drinkers, quite a lot of them, although it was never discussed, but today I realise a lot of them were alcoholics themselves. We were all trying to sort each other's lives out, but we were pretty much all in the same boat, and quite a lot of them are dead, and some of them are in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous today, which I'm pleased about. But because of the hangovers, I went into a different profession, and I started selling and became an insurance broker, and started selling life insurance and setting up mortgages. And really the reason I did that was so I could have more time to drink during the day, because I used to drive past pubs and watch these blokes, the brokers in the pubs, and they'd be having liquid lunches and going out for meals, and that sort of appealed to me. So I did my training with Citicorp and started selling, and I did fairly well at that. The problem was it gave me free rein to drink whenever I wanted to drink. I was good at my job, but then I would go on massive benders. And by this stage, I was working in a mortgage company, and I didn't like being told what to do, and I was having rows with people in the office, so I decided to go and work for myself. And that was even worse, if you like, because it meant I could do anything I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it, and that's pretty much the way I wanted it. But I had no discipline, and alcohol had me, and that's when the morning drinking started. And I would go out on drinking sessions with friends, and they could last for days on end, and then I'd regroup, try and do a bit of business. But the days got very, very dark, because the hangovers were increasingly worse. I became bloated, I started passing blood. And to cut a long story short, I ended up going to the Monaco Grand Prix with some drinking friends of mine, and I went over there and to watch the Grand Prix, and they were all at the start line drinking champagne, and I was at the top of the hill in a pub watching it on the telly, drinking a pint, and I used to drink a lot of Jack Daniels as well. That was my main drink at the end, but I've been through a whole range of drinks, and for some strange reason the alcohol wasn't working, and this had never happened to me before, but I often say that I lost control of my mind, and I was getting audio and visual hallucinations. Basically I was hearing voices and seeing things. I had taken drugs at couple of stages of my drinking career, But I didn't like what they did to me because I didn't like being that much out of control. I like to try and be in control, if you like. But I took acid once, and I took ecstasy once, but alcohol was my drug of choice. And I got audio visual hallucinations, and I told my friend to knock me out, and he had me on the floor and he was hitting me in the face, but he couldn't knock me out, so they called an ambulance, and the ambulance came, and there was a lot of heavy, there was a series of very, very heavy events around that trip, and I don't know if they gave me electric shock treatment when I was in the hospital, but when I came round I was paranoid. I had conspiracy theories going on in my head. I thought everybody was out to get me, and I had a pair of shorts on, and I ran out of the hospital and I ran around the streets knocking on people's doors in the middle of the night, and eventually through a series of events got back to the campsite where we were staying, and eventually got put on a plane back to Gatwick, where I tried opening the hatch on the plane. I thought I was going to get shot. I was taken off the plane in a wheelchair. I'd ripped the soles of my feet off. There was blood all over the place, and they brought me to Ealing Hospital, where they tried to detox me. I didn't even know what a detox was, but my dad picked me up from Gatwick and took me to Ealing Hospital, and they gave me pills, but I was that paranoid I didn't even want to take the tablets. So I was cold turkey in it, and I was hearing things and seeing things for days and days and days on end, and my mind was in complete and utter turmoil, and I can't think of a word for it, but those of you that are listening to this will understand what I'm talking about. Terror, pure terror. And I got discharged from Ealing Hospital, and shortly after that I was admitted to the Priory. My wife at the time was in Bupa, so they paid for me to go to the Priory, where I was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and I was duly medicated, and I went back to Guernsey, which was where I was living, and I went to see a friend of mine who I used to drink with, and he said, "I'm going to a meeting tonight, do you want to come, John?" And I said, "Well, what's the meeting?" He said, "It's an AA meeting." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Just come and see and tell me what you think of it." So I went. He said, "Try not to drink." So I went and had a drink, and I went, and I don't remember much about the meeting, but I do remember that the seed was sown for me to know that if anything really did come on top, I had somewhere where I could go. Because really, all I had up until then was a belly full of religion, and a belly full of beer and a head full of religion. And my head was confused and mashed up. And alcoholism is the only illness in the world that tells you haven't got it. And the denial in me was so strong that I actually thought, well, I'm not as bad as that. And again, it was that meeting pulled me up short, because in one way it did help me, because I thought, well, right, maybe, just maybe, it's got something to do with the people that I drink with. So if I don't drink with that crowd anymore, I'll be all right. Maybe it's got something to do with Jack Daniels. Maybe if I didn't drink as much Jack Daniels, I'll be all right. Maybe if I drink at a different time of the day, I'll be all right. Maybe if I drink in a different place, I'll be all right. And I tried all these methods of so-called controlled drinking, but the bottom line was, as soon as I put alcohol into my system of any description, I could not stop drinking, and I would never, ever, ever go into a pub and ask for one drink. Never. So what I would do by taking one drink is I would start a cycle, and I could never safely predict the outcome of what would happen when I took that first drink. And I learnt that over an 8-month period, and then another friend came into my life, and he was going to commit suicide, and I stopped him from doing it, and I took him to the hospital, a local hospital, and got him in vitamin injections. Took him home. Me and my wife tried to dry him out, and after a day of helping him, he says to me, "John," he said, "I need help." And I remember looking at him and thinking, "You're not the fucking only one, mate," because by this stage I was rattling and rolling myself. And I'd remembered the meeting I'd been to some 8 months previously, so I made a phone call on his behalf to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I said, "I've got a friend here that needs help." And they said, "We need to speak to him," and I said, "Well, he's in no fit state to speak to you. You've just got to take my word for it." And very kindly these two men came round. They came to my house, and they sat in my lounge while my wife was making the tea, and they basically told their stories. They did what I'm doing now, and they shared their experience, strength and hope with Ian. And as I often say, I was just sitting there to make sure they weren't going to brainwash him or give him any dodgy information. But what it basically did was it split my head wide open, and I was 12-step by accident. And at the end of their talk, I put my hand up and I said, for the first time in my life, I'm an alcoholic. And for a couple of days there, I was going through the ringer, and they told me that there were 4 or 5 meetings a week at that time, and I was going to meetings, but shortly after I stopped drinking, which was in January 1993, until today I've not had to take a drink. And I put that down to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the grace of a higher power. And that's when my journey began. And I'm left really in a different ballpark now, because all of a sudden alcohol, which I believe I had a love affair with for quite a number of years, was taken away. I grieved not being able to drink. I had the compulsion to drink for at least 3 months. I wasn't drinking, but I was thinking about it. But I was going to meetings, and they were telling me to take phone numbers, to use the phone, pick up the phone instead of pick up the drink. Go to meetings, share. First few meetings I went to, I cried like a baby. I had mixed emotions, actually. I had mixed emotions because on one hand I felt I was given unconditional love. I was given a cup of tea and a biscuit, and I could have a cigarette, and I could sit there and just listen. And these people just let me come to. And then I saw the word God, and I thought, here we go again. I'm going to be banging tambourines and trying to convert everybody. And they said, "No, John, it's God as you understand it." And that suited me, and that's changed through the years. So what I basically did was I made Alcoholics Anonymous my higher power, and I started going to meetings, and I started hanging around with members of Alcoholics Anonymous. An awful lot's happened to me in recovery. without going into too much detail, I've been sectioned 10 times under the Mental Health Act in the last 13 years. I've had a lot of problems with medication, taking medication and coming off medication and being given different types of medication. I'm still quite a belligerent type of alcoholic that quite often seems to have to learn the hard way. They talk about spiritual experiences and spiritual awakenings. I believe that my awakenings come through education. I have the educational variety, which means I learn by my mistakes, and I've made a lot of mistakes in recovery. I separated in early recovery, really because there was too much damage done in my marriage, and I wasn't well enough to maintain my marriage, so I left my wife. And later got divorced after 10 years of separation. I would say I've got a good relationship with my children. I love my 2 children dearly, and the best I can do, nothing's perfect, the best I can do is be available for them, and the best amends I can make to my children, or even anybody that knows me, is to stay sober on a daily basis. I was given vast amounts of antipsychotic medication when I stopped drinking, and the reason I'm probably moving around, and you're probably thinking he's got the DTs looking at me now, it is because the antipsychotic medication I was given, the side effects of it have damaged my central nervous system, and I've had to live with a movement disorder called tardive dyskinesia for the last 10 years or so. And it causes me a great deal of discomfort, but I know that a drink won't make any situation any better, and it certainly won't make my nerves any better, because if I think where I ended up 13 years ago, and this illness gets worse, it never gets better, I would probably be the type of alcoholic that would get locked up, or I would be dead by now if I picked a drink up. So I have to learn with it, and I have to try and get acceptance around it as well, because there are people that are in far worse situations, I still have to take prescribed medication from the doctor, but in my infinite wisdom some years ago I decided to smoke marijuana to help with the nervous disorder, which probably wasn't the cleverest of ideas, but I did it because I felt like I had no choice, because my life was really, really unbearable in recovery, and I was in an awful lot of discomfort, an awful lot of pain. I was still going to meetings, and I was doing chairs stoned, and I was going to meetings stoned, and people were saying, "You're sounding fantastic, John," and initially it did work, it helped to relax the muscles, but then again it stopped working, and I became very, very paranoid and very, very fearful, and I had to seek help to get off marijuana, which I did 9 months ago, and I went to another fellowship called Narcotics Anonymous, where I got great support and great love, and I've got some good friends in that fellowship as well, and I'm a member of both fellowships. In fact, I've probably got quite a few addictions. I've got an addictive personality, and I actually believe that addiction is addiction. I went into food at one stage and turned into 20.5 stone, and I had to go to Overeaters Anonymous for a few meetings to help, to get help from them to lose weight. And I see it this way: if you want to learn how to play golf, you go and see a golf coach. If you want to learn how to play snooker, you go and get a snooker coach. If you want your car fixed, you go to a garage. So if you've got a problem with alcohol, you go to the experts, and the experts in my mind are people that have been there. Because I believe that only another alcoholic can truly help another alcoholic. And I don't mean that in a patronising way, but what I mean is only one alcoholic can understand another alcoholic and identify with another alcoholic. Because this is the main thing really is this. Identification is something that I need. I have to have the company of other recovering alcoholics or addicts. I have to have their company on a regular basis, else I can forget where I came from and I could end up using again or drinking again. And they understand where I'm coming from. When I tell them my fears and my phobias and my paranoias, and I tell them that I'm scared, and I tell them that I'm vulnerable, and I tell them that I'm frightened, things that I could never do when I was stood at the bar drinking copious amounts of alcohol, things that I could never do because my ego wouldn't allow me to, because grown men don't cry, and you're supposed to be hard, and you're supposed to be tough. And you're supposed to be scared of nothing. You see, the bottom line is my ego's been deflated and continues to be deflated until I turn into the person that I'm supposed to be, and the person I'm supposed to be is my natural self. I've had help from a lot of people. You see, religion was okay for a period of time, but there's a lot of people in religion that I can't get identification from. A lot of it is run on emotion and getting hyped up, and I've got to keep my feet firmly on the floor. That's not to say it doesn't help some people. This is my story. For me, spirituality is practicality, and spirituality and religion are different. Religion is for those that don't want to go to hell, and spirituality is for those that have been there. And spirituality really is just for me about being honest with myself and trying to be honest with another human being. And I've had help from a lot of people in my recovery. I've had help from a lot of people throughout my life, but I probably couldn't see it because I was too up my own arse to even see it or accept it. But I've had some good men, some good men in recovery. I went through the steps at one period of my recovery, and you know, there's been a few men in my life that I still feel sad that they're not here anymore. You know, and their memories do live on with me. You know, and whether they've gone to the big meeting in the sky or not, I don't know, but these men there's certain men in my life that have gone the extra mile, and I shall be forever grateful for that. I've had outside help as well. I believe, you know, I believe in getting as much help as you can possibly get. I sort of did AA on the streets, if you like, and never went into rehab. I did AA on the streets, and at the moment there's over 600 meetings a week in London. I'm not here to promote Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's attraction rather than promotion. And I would say that there's other organisations too that are on the front line of alcoholism in this city, and one of them is Turning Point. And Turning Point have been very helpful to me in getting me counselling about childhood issues, which I'm still doing now, coming to terms with my past. I get help from Turning Point. I get acupuncture, and it's free, and I get massages which help to relax me, and they're free, and I get a lot of love from the people there, and you know, it's all good, and I know that I'm in with a chance. And the record for sobriety is 24 hours. It's just one day at a time. It's got very little to do with how long a person hasn't had a drink for. I will finish on this. For me, it's not about being happy all the time. I don't believe it's about chasing happiness. I believe it's about being content. Recovery is about being content. And I get periods of contentment. I had contentment once and then I lost it. And now I'm beginning to get it back again on a very deeper level. I'm living on my own at the moment and have done for some time. I find it hard to do housework, but I have a parrot. His name's Rio, and you know, she sits on my shoulder in the morning, and we share breakfast together and have a cup of tea. And it's nice to have something in the flat because it takes away that loneliness. And you know, we have our arguments, we have our ups and downs, but in general, she's a good old bird, you know. And it's about, for me, it's about having a relationship with myself. It's an inside job. It's not about material things, although they're nice if they come. It's an inside job, and it's about becoming a better person, trying to become a respectable member of the community, trying to give back, trying to do service, trying to help other alcoholics if I can. And to anybody that's watching this, I wish you well, and I'll trudge the road of happy destiny with you. Bye for now.